We're here on Main Street in Palmyra, New York, upstate New York, checking out some absolutely insane churches. Welcome zombies to upstate New York. We're going to be looking specifically at the town of Palmyra today, but this one is jam-packed. We're going to be exploring several other things as well, and by the end of this, you're going to be mind-blown as far as what America actually looked like in the 1700s, 1800s, prior to that. So here's where we're at, upstate New York, a little bit east of Rochester, a little bit north of what are called the Finger Lakes right here, and just a little bit south of Lake Ontario right here, and that line right there is the border into Canada. So we're also just a little bit south of Canada right now. And then New York City, because we'll touch on that briefly, is right down here. We're going to specifically focus on Palmyra, but as we do that, I'm going to take a look at Buffalo on over to Albany and the connections between there, and then we'll also drop down to New York City and really paint a clear picture of what New York State as a whole looked like. But really I wanted to explore upstate New York and this very interesting town of Palmyra. So Wayne County, New York, upstate New York. The town is named after the ancient city Palmyra in Syria. So check this out. The hypothesis that I've been putting forward in these videos is that there was a previous advanced civilization, maybe multiple advanced civilizations previously here in this country. You know, it wouldn't have been the same country at those times, but on this same land, same continent that we haven't been told about, that were master builders and very advanced, prosperous civilizations, and also came from what we would think of as Italy and Rome and Greece. And that's why we see so much of the same architecture in all of these different buildings that we're looking at. And they even seem to look just as old and weathered as some of the ancient ruins from the east. But when you read the official story on them, then that's where it's like, oh, everything was built from 1880 to 1910. And then it was all destroyed by 1910 to 1950. And here's a look at some interior that they found of old Palmyra in Syria. And you can see, I mean, we're looking at very similar stuff. These types of pillars with these types of, I don't know exactly what they are, flowery plant type looking things, the same type of square borders around things. Here's a look at some pillars. We've seen this on several buildings. We'll actually see this in a video today in Palmyra, New York, where you've got same types of pillars, the same type of exact angle of pyramid or triangle on top of the building here that I point out in my videos. And also, you know, the same type of square border design stuff, all made out of rock, strikingly similar. Here's another look at it. I mean, this looks like it's been through more than some of the buildings we've looked at. More weathered, more stripped down, more beat up, but still holding a lot of that very same architecture and building style. And still standing, a lot of it. And we also see very similar types of arches. We'll look at some in today's video as well. And then also, if you notice right here, we might look into this a little bit today, but the shape of this mound out here. And then obviously if you just keep uncovering that, like this rock up top was probably part of this whole building that used to be here. And then you've even got some of this vines and grapes design work that I've talked about and mentioned, that I think the story is that it was all hand picked and carved, when it clearly looks like it was done with I don't know if it was machinery is the right word you'd use, but some sort of technology. Like it doesn't look like every single bit of that across all these buildings everywhere is just people picking at it. It's all too impressive for and I'm not, like, I really believe that yes, humans can do very impressive things with very little, but I just don't think that's what we're looking at in the story of this architecture here. It's I mean, when you look at it in the East, it's proof of like, well, they figured something out, like, and we don't know how to do it. We couldn't reconstruct all that. But when you look at it over here in the West, it's like, no, they built all that with horse and buggy and pick and axe. It's like, but it's the same stuff. There's just different stories going on. And there was also this, let's see, this is part of an altar, they say, and it's got a gnarly eagle on it. We've definitely seen some gnarly eagles. Here's another look at what seems to be some kind of, I don't know, maybe stadium or theater or maybe court, whether sport court or like judgment court, something, I don't know. But, and then you can see up here, we've got that exact same angle of triangle. And then here in the background, if you take a look at the shape and angle of that mount, and what does that actually turn out to be? What's actually buried underneath this cone-shaped structure? A castle, a city. And when we read about the history of Palmyra, New York, jumping back to New York now, the first thing that it says is that the prehistoric Adena culture left mounds in the area. So then I looked into the Adena culture. The Adena culture was a pre-Columbian Native American culture that existed from 800 BCE to 100 CE. So this civilization dates back a very long time, even a long time pre-zero. And the Adena culture refers to what were probably a number of related Native American societies sharing a burial complex and ceremonial system. I'm going to say they were definitely sharing a complex and a system, but maybe instead of just burial and ceremonial, that's kind of more the story. And the truth of it is these were probably full-blown prosperous city complexes and systems and that sort of a thing, technologies. And the Adena culture was centered on the location of modern state Ohio, which this works perfectly with the playlist I just made when I visited Ohio. And I would look at specifically Nelson Ledges State Park, that video that I made. We're gonna be exploring this ledge. I'm calling this a wall, and I'll fill you in more as we go throughout the video, but I believe this is a massive ancient rock wall built by an ancient civilization here in this country, on this continent, and it's been flooded and buried / destroyed. I believe those rocks, that wall that we're looking at, probably matched this time period of the Adena culture. And then the newer buildings like Hiram College. I think there was this ancient civilization, the Adena, and then there was another one, which is what we see Hiram College, like kind of being built on top of their previous rock. And then now we're on top of that previous culture, something like that. I think several advanced cultures, and it also seems that as far back as you go, the further back you go, they were bigger, better builders with more massive, impressive rock. And then we're just like to the point where we're just building with twigs now. Okay, and here's what it says about their mound work. Lasting traces of Adena culture are still seen in the remains of their substantial earthworks. They were actually like big swaths of earth, actually shaping it and controlling it and managing it and building huge buildings on top of it. Like when we looked at those, the forts in the previous video, like Fort Niagara and Star Forts, and you can see how they built land. And we're gonna look today at a canal system that's just super impressive that I believe dates probably back to these people. But it says that their mounds generally range in size from 20 feet, 6 meters to 300 feet, 91 meters in diameter, and served as burial structures, ceremonial sites, historic markers, and possibly gathering places. And it says that the monuments were built using hundreds of thousands of baskets full of specially selected and graded earth. Baskets. So here's a look at some of their mounds, and just as I click through these, just remember the shape of some things I've previously pointed out that when uncovered are not just dirt carried in baskets that made mounds. And we're going to come back to mounds more in a second, because we're going to talk about a mound in Palmyra that has been called Hill Cumorah, where supposedly a kid found some gold plates that turned into the Book of Mormon. It was completed up to Palmyra in 1822, although the canal was not completed to its western terminus until 1825. Palmyra is part of the Erie Canalway National Heritage Corridor. Construction began July 4th, 1817. The first use was 1821, fully complete 1825, so roughly 8 years. But they were using it in 4, stretching 363 miles from the Hudson River in Albany to Lake Erie in Buffalo. So from here in Albany, all the way across New York State to Buffalo, connecting to Lake Erie, which connects to all of this over here. And right here, the canal has 34 numbered locks. Okay, since then, also, this is definitely worth noting, since all that very impressive and miles of construction, much of the Erie Canal is no longer in use. It's not all connected like it used to be. And here's some remnants of it. Does that rock structure remnant look similar to maybe any type of rock structure we saw over in Syria, in that city of Palmyra? And that was just a little remnant. If we look at what a lock actually is, it's one of these big, massive, fully rock cement locks. And they built 36 of these across 363 miles in 8 years total. But it was usable within 4. Here's another look at one under construction. I see a lot of lumber sitting around, but I'm not sure where all this rock that they're stacking is coming from or how it's getting here. I mean, I guess there's a little train track right here. Still don't see rock though, I just see lumber. And as I started to see how this Erie Canal used to be set up, that it literally ran from eastern New York all the way to western New York, and then you could hit 2 different Great Lakes, and that could open you up to Canada in the north or expose you to more of the West in America. When I started to see that, then maybe it started to make a little bit more sense of being able to move a ton of weight, because if you can build a really huge boat and you can stack a lot of weight on a boat and still have it be buoyant and move it down waters and canals. And the more I looked at it, it looks like they had a pretty complex canal system that would allow them to move things around quite a bit. But with that said, if you look at this picture right here, this is a lumber boat and it's loaded up pretty good. You can see it's weighing down the boat a bit. I'd have to do some research on how much boats can and all that, but either way, I have tried hard in a whole bunch of different construction photos. You just don't see the rock. You don't see it stacked up next to the buildings. You don't see it on the boats. You do see some lumber, but all this stuff wasn't built out of lumber. So that's again like, oh yeah, this canal system, very impressive and everything, but it looks like a large part of it was just still lumber that they were moving on it. And then let's say they even were able to move all of the weight on the boats. There's still the issue of moving it from the boat to the actual locations. And sure, there's railroads, but we're talking time periods here that are earlier than railroads being connected all over the country. And then you still got the issue from railroad to location. It was faster than carts pulled by draft animals and cut transport costs by about 95%. I mean, obviously it's going to be faster than carts on mud. Like, water is going to be way more efficient than that. And not just more efficient for transportation and travel, but also, you've got water there for a whole lot of different uses. And like I was thinking, it would probably be cheaper, and it says by 95%. So this is again where I think, man, maybe we've just gone backwards. We're just moving away from all the amazingness that's here and just moving further and further away from it, because this was amazing architecture. They had canal systems, the way that water ran and the way that you could move on the water, people and supplies, and how much more efficient and cost effective it was. And so that's when I started thinking, okay, maybe there is a way for an economy to back the movement of such large amounts of weight and rock. But again, the whole country wasn't connected. This is earlier than everything be connected via railway. This is just the eastern side of the United States, and supposedly everything west wasn't explored, but we still see same architecture and buildings from very similar time periods, or a little bit later, because we didn't get there till a little bit later. But obviously you can see the buildings are just as old and weathered in the same style and everything as all the oldest ones that we see over here, which are probably on the East Coast, which are actually probably much older than the dates that we've been given on them. So it just, again, doesn't add up. To me, it really looks like, wow, previous people lived here that were much better builders, and we have some of their leftovers, and it looks like people earlier than us had more of their leftovers, and we're just, like I said, moving away from all the amazingness and just more and more towards twigs and tiny homes and shipping containers. But now for the ultimate line I found in all of my reading that I did. The men who planned and oversaw construction were novices as surveyors and as engineers. You know what? Real fast before we do that, let me mention aqueducts. So an aqueduct is a water course constructed to carry water from a source to a distribution point far away. It's water technology, water engineering. Aqueducts were used in ancient Greece, ancient Egypt, and ancient Rome. Okay? Here's a look at one of the Erie aqueducts when the water was emptied out of it. And this is all extremely massive, impressive stone arches and tunnels, and what in the world are we looking at? And this is looking at it from the top here. This picture is from 1922 apparently. This is a picture from the top here. Look at these archways and all that stone. And here's a look at it in color, looking a little prettier and nicer. Just absolutely insane, completely stone, bridge, archway, tunnels. And they built 32 navigable aqueducts. So that's 36 locks, 32 aqueducts, 363 miles, plus all the boats. And it happened in 4 to 8 years. Fully complete in 8. Oh yeah, and then back to what we were saying about the people who built it. The men who planned and oversaw construction were novices as surveys and as engineers. They were noobs. Complete noobs are the ones who oversaw construction. Come on, that's not possible. There were no civil engineers in the United States. So this is just a big old joke. Nobody in modern times constructed any of this. And so Palmyra, right here, is just one of the places that this Erie Canal went through on its 363-mile journey. Here's an ancient aqueduct from the ancient Roman Empire. Is there a difference? I've never seen one of these before, but this is super dope. An underground aqueduct. These are in Peru. Again, another type of water technology here. Back to the city of Palmyra now. It was also the birthplace of the Latter-day Saint movement, also known as the Mormons, and the founder of that movement was Joseph Smith. So Joseph Smith founded the Mormon church, the Mormon religion, here in Palmyra. In 1830 is when the first copies of the Book of Mormon were published. And here's a picture of a hill in Palmyra. This picture was taken apparently in 1906. And this is apparently the hill Cumorah, where Joseph Smith found gold plates with ancient writing on them from ancient Reformed Egyptian, I think is what they called it. And then he translated that and published it as like a book, paper book, known as the Book of Mormon. And so, interesting story, obviously. But if we look at the shape of this mountain and how I pointed that out earlier, and then also all the architecture that's sitting here, it matches all the ancient Roman, Greek, Eastern architecture. And he's supposedly found some plates right here that have ancient writings in an ancient language talking about an ancient people, prosperous people right here on this very land. And this is kind of why I think it's a good idea to watch my videos in order, because in my Ohio playlist I talk about also the Mormons and Joseph Smith moving there, because when he set all this up in New York, they actually got kicked out because people really hated him for it. So he got kicked out basically and then moved to Ohio. And now in his travels and how he traveled and moved around, it was on the Lake Erie Canal. And so I visited the city of Palmyra, I visited the hill Cumorah, and I visited where Joseph Smith lived while he was there. And to me, it looks like there's a story being painted of a very poor lumber type of person, people, family, culture. But when we look at the Erie Canal, for example, when we look at the city of Buffalo, Albany, Syracuse, Palmyra itself, and then when you think about how they would, how this canal system was set up back then, it looks like once again a log cabin has been plopped down to serve a certain story, to cover up the fact that there was an advanced, prosperous rock building, amazing technology, civilization, several of them previously right here. But Palmyra claims to be the only city or village in the US to have 4 churches at a 4-corner intersection facing each other. And these are so much older than what we're told, and there's so much more buried than we're told. And yeah, I mean, I'll show you this. I was so blown away to see all 4 of these, and they're all facing each other, and they're all just like such impressive buildings. And of course, the Palmyra Village Historic District was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 2009. So everything we're looking at, from the Erie Canal to this little city of Palmyra to Albany, which is the capital of New York State, all of it National Historical Register. And the county that Palmyra is in is Wayne County. And prior to the arrival of Europeans, the land Wayne County encompasses was originally part of the Iroquois Confederacy, which had existed from around August 31, 1142. So in just my last video, I recommend you go back and watch it. I touched on the Iroquois Confederacy and how this area more or less was their breadbasket. And it says right here that the Iroquois Confederacy dates back to 1142. So that honestly would make sense to me when it comes to maybe more accurate, appropriate dates on some of these buildings. And I would say instead of the 1800s, 1900s, sometimes they say 1700s, horse, axe, buggy, pickaxe, lumber people, instead of them having constructed all this, I'd say likely the Iroquois Confederacy, dating back to that type of a date, constructed all this. And so not only was it just a breadbasket of farmland like I talked about in the last video, but there was also canalways connecting everything, and just very efficient, productive, prosperous means of transporting people and goods, conducting commerce, having water everywhere for everyone all the time. This is a really cool cobblestone house that I saw. So in 1830, and this is apparently a canal house, part of the canal. So again, just like, and it's still standing here. So perfectly intact, looking great, been stripped, but this cobblestone, this is probably one of my favorite types of ways they built with rock. That's so cool. Site of the first church in Palmyra. So 1811 is apparently when this one was up and running. Pillars, lots of rock, arches, tower on top. Obviously the rock has been painted over quite a bit, at least the brickwork. And then we see the stained glass, tall stained glass windows. Here's another look at the pillars. Here's a look at it from the side. You can see how big it is. And of course, a nice little trail by the, yeah, I mean, look, so let's touch on it real fast. So that's a train, sorry, not a train, a plane leaving that trail in the sky, and all the other white wispy cloud you kind of see in the sky, that's what that trail turns into. And you do that 20, 30 times, spray the sky with a trail like that, let it all spread out, basically creates a huge haze over the entire sky. And I mean, look at windows is another thing that I haven't talked a lot about, but we super underappreciate. This tall of a window, all glass, and it's all stained, beautiful art glass. Right here, we'll pan into the center section of the 4 corners, and you can start to see all the different steeples right here of the 4 different churches. So we've got the first one right here on the left, the one I just zoomed in on, and then over here on the right side, we've got 2 more steeples. And here's a look at the intersection from the top. So right here, we've got the First United Methodist Church, the Western Presbyterian Church, got the Zion Episcopal Church right here, and then the Canal Town Community Church. And the first one I'll show you is this one right here, the Western Presbyterian Church. Impressive pillars, look at the triangles on it. Nice big tower. White siding thrown over it, but there's still a lot of the brick there, which is really nice and beautiful. And you can also see right there above the doors, you know, whatever originally was there has been stripped off. And then here's a look at the side of it, which in my opinion is just showing us that it's been buried, we've paved over it, we've covered up some windows, we've created new entrances, and this building actually stands in its original state. If you can see it fully top to bottom, a much taller building. And then if we move just across the street, goodness, that thing is a massive, and just some really, really cool, unique design. Just like the added detail on this building is super, super cool. And then like the circles and all the windows. I don't know, it's just unique, it's very cool. And a beast, gorgeous too. I really like this one. Such a cool building. A lot to it. Just so many things that impress me about it. And then, so this is interesting. They've got the brick and then the actual rock stone. And then you've got some windows that look like have been covered up with new cement. Man, we don't even do that type of stuff with wood. You know, like that's just, but to do that out of rock would just seem so unnecessary today. And these windows. So they've been painted white. The trim of them have been painted white. So that's not its natural color. And I did find this along the other side, little rinky-dink metal, new entrance, metal railing to that kind of back part of the building. And let's cross the street. And I mean, if you can imagine the weight that is sitting in this one intersection right now, just sitting on the earth right here, yo, that is a heavy, heavy intersection. And look at all that. Like that's just, and then I'm just taking a look at another unique spot. Looked like it'd been burnt up. We got some different changes in the rock there. Right next to the new entrance with the new metal rails. See, like this looks like all the really nice original rock. And look at the buried windows. Like that's just and then we've got plastic pipes shooting up out through it. Yeah, look at it from the side right here. Woo! That's a good look. Like you can literally, inside our homes, our stick frame drywall homes, you can just go punch a hole in the wall. You can take a baseball bat and swing right through it. And then you can see the other two churches across the street there, that big rock one. And then there's also this huge high school over here, which I'll show you. Massive cement archways like this right here. Yo, that's so intense right there. Look at the detail in these flower things. Again, all rock, all stone, but look how they switch up the design and all these brickworks in like each one of the channels. And then we've got the unique art up there. I couldn't quite get to it with my zoom, but I'm pretty sure that's an eagle sitting in there. And then this guy, like this, this one's just, I wish there was a way I could, like through these videos, you guys could slap the rock, because seeing it's one thing, but when you actually walk up and just slap your hand on one of these, whew, and that tower, I just can't believe that the tower, the steeple on it, entirely rock. And I would guess that this wasn't originally an entrance. That was just probably originally another window right there, and the tower just keeps going down. But because where the mud settled, that's where we could create a door, put some steps up with the rails, and now we've got a door to enter into the building. Yeah, and right here you can see this is a different entryway, but you can see we just stacked new blocks of cement on top of the original rock of the building. Another set of stairs to an entrance we created out of a window. This picture right here just looks like the meanest, baddest linebacker that you just don't want to mess with. And see right here, each one of these has just really beautiful, perfect art inside of it. See here, they're going with the log home story. We can never find really any construction photos, but we can find drawings and paintings of wood. But then on the bottom of the wood, we can see all the same rock structure and perfectly laid brick chimneys that we see in all of this other architecture we've been looking at. And we also saw this same thing with the John Johnson farm that I did in my Ohio video, which was a place where Joseph Smith lived when he had to move to Ohio. Here's a look at the historic Johnson Farms in Hiram, Ohio. Making it look like wood barn, but if you actually take a look at it, it looks like it was something much bigger and better. And when you look at what was just in these areas in the same time periods, it looks like, yeah, it was probably something more like that. For example, Buffalo, New York, gold dome, super ancient, super brick architecture, pillars, arches. I mean, that's ancient world right there. And then in Buffalo, you had the Temple of Music, which is this right here, which is, I don't believe is there anymore. Like they say, this stuff, they say they just built up and tore down quickly for like a fun little fair or a little music festival or whatever. But like, look at this. This is full waterways, fountains, stairs, statues, domes. Like this is the real deal. This is like the real old America, the real old architecture, the real perhaps Iroquois Confederacy, Adena culture. This is perhaps the type of stuff they built, or maybe even people before them built this. But this wasn't what people in the 1800s built. This is stuff that was already sitting there. And this is the stuff that the Erie Canal connected from Albany all the way over to here, Buffalo, with Palmyra sitting right in between it with these super insane four-cornered churches. I'm going to try and paint the full picture of here what this actually looked like instead of these little wood drawings and same rock foundation, everything, but slapping wood over the top of it. Here's another look at the Temple of Music. Like, look at the detail on this. This is the old world. This is a piece of it here, like a palace, a kingdom. And Palmyra, I believe, was a piece, also some little leftover of this. But this type of stuff has just been getting destroyed for past 100, 200 years, maybe longer. Maybe it's just been a gradual destruction process this whole time. Here's another look at Buffalo. Like, look at the water ponds out here in front and all the statues. Oh, and this was all by hand, by the way, right? Like, and then here's a look at Albany in apparently 1918. And I've got a video coming up on Albany. I visited that place. I honestly was like, I stepped into Star Wars or something. Like, this is the type of buildings and layout that's in Albany is like, honestly, I did not expect it. It felt foreign, but not like foreign into a different, into like just like, I mean, look at this. It's an old castle, and that's exactly what it felt like, because that's what it is. 1100s, Adena time period, sure, I could see it sitting here since the 1100s, no problem. And then here's Albany in the late 1800s, so we're not into the 1900s quite yet. And look at all this. And then this castle just thrown up over here. And so I'll show you some more of Albany later on, but that's what we're looking at. We're looking at the Erie Canal connecting Albany to Buffalo, and then Palmyra sits in between. And these are the types of buildings. This is the type of architecture. This is the type of water systems and technologies that people were using back then. But I'm also saying they were using them, but they were built by a people even before those people. You see the foundation of the log home there, which is just all the same type of rock. And then across the way, you've got, this is like the visitor center when you get to the property, but it's got the two old brick chimneys, and then look at the rock at the bottom of it. And then they've just thrown siding over the top, and it's buried, obviously. So, I mean, there's a building right there out of rock. Here's a building right here out of rock. I mean, did I say rock? I meant to say cabin. These are wood cabins. Oh yeah, and then when you look at the other side of that cabin, I mean, look at that rock right there. Possibly another old chimney, something like that. And then this was another, see, look, pictures, we're building frames, putting up frame homes. And this one, I don't know, they even like, they like threw a wood foundation on top of the rock foundation, it looks like right here. So maybe this rock isn't actually running up the sides of these walls. Maybe these are actually wood walls. And then they've also got this barn here, which, I don't know, maybe, I didn't find any rock here with this one. And it didn't look like it went any deeper into the earth or anything. They had a couple boulders in the corners and then put the wood on top of it. It's like, there's no way this is the original from way back then, that's for sure. So I think maybe just, again, to serve the story. So here's a pan over from that barn back over to the first wood cabin that we looked at. And yeah, I mean, this is a big farm too. I don't know exactly how many acres it is, but I mean, we're seeing several structures here. We're seeing original rock with a new wood story thrown over the top of it on top of a lot of acres. And then here's a look at the cabin from the backside with an old brick chimney right through it. And then I took even a little more of a peek underneath that kind of porch they had there on the back, just to see what the rock work was underneath. And it looked like, I don't know, to me it looked like just, yeah, some remainders of whatever the original rock structure was still there. Like, I think like a couple remaining walls or something right there, but then just added in wood and everything to the rest of it. Because, I mean, look at this rock right here. That's just as impressive as other rock work we see. I mean, look at this from the side right here. Like, that's no joke. And then I drove from here over to the hill Cumorah, and I passed this along the way. Again, just some of my favorite, this cobblestone rock type of build. It looks so sick. I love that. Just a cool little building right there. And I also passed this along the way. That looks like some castle remnants. See that right there? Come up a little forward, and you can see on the wall, so I mean, we got an old rock wall right here, brick wall, but you got little arches along it the whole way. And then here's just another church. Again, this is on the outside of the four corners. It's not part of the four corners thing, but just another big brick, completely rock solid church with amazing stained glass windows. Super unique stained glass windows this time. Yeah, I mean, look at these windows. Very impressive. And then also the siding thrown over pieces of it. And yeah, I mean, look at the rock there at the bottom. That's literally the same stuff we just saw at the Smith farm. So right here, it was an all brick, all rock building, super beautiful, super heavy, super gorgeous, very impressive. But over there, wrap a little bit of wood around it and it's just a wood cabin. Super poor, didn't know how to build. Just thought this was interesting. And then coming around the side, we've got a new doorway. Like, that was again probably another window right there that we just busted through and created a door. And then this was just a house that I saw, and I actually, the guy was working outside of his house, and so I jumped in. I jumped out and made sure it was okay that I took a picture. He was totally cool with it. And look at this thing, all brick, so sick. Like that color on it, and this tower up here. Like, what the heck? Here's another very impressive church just right in the area, and you'll see same stuff, white siding, very impressive windows, very impressive rock. This one was really unique. I hadn't quite seen that type of a design, but man, I would love to see that without the white siding. Like, whatever rock sitting underneath there, way more better. So many of these guys, like, just go drive around in these areas, you just see these churches everywhere with white siding thrown over the top of them. Some of them not, but a lot of them, I'd say most of them have just the siding thrown over them. But and the stained glass windows just covered up, the amazing towers on them. This one's even still got that green type of color on it. Look at the columns and arches in the tower. Here's another one. And then, just as a quick bonus, I thought we'd look at a couple construction pictures or something like that. So let's just take this one for example. This one was in 1898. Now, I don't know what this is on top of the cart. I don't know how much it weighs, but it looks pretty solid, pretty heavy metal, and probably something inside of it. And they've got a whole team of horses here. I mean, that's a 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15 to 20 horses, like 14 to 20 horses, maybe something in there. And just for this. Now, if we had to build these buildings out of blocks this size, how many trips would we have to make? How many horses would we have to use? How much food would we have to feed those horses? And most of the construction photos that we see aren't even close to this. Like, this is like, oh yeah, that's a pretty decent cart there. You got some real weight on it with chains. You've got 20 horses. But most of the pictures we see are a little cart with the flimsy wood wheels and a little bit of lumber and 2 horses. And like, how? If this is what's needed to move this is one block of one of those buildings, you know? This is one block for the Erie Canal. One block. And we've got to move hundreds of thousands or millions of blocks this size. We need an entire earth covered with just horses. And this is where I say, yeah, maybe if you can replace 20 horses with 2 elephants or 2 mammoths or 2 much bigger animals or 4, then maybe, yeah.